So this is everybody's first try at being a mentor for Practicum, right? Or being a mentor in general. Well, not mentor in general, but at least a mentor at Practicum. I know Rebecca has been a mentor already, but I think everybody else is their first time mentoring in general. I know some have. Okay.
Yeah, it's my first time.
First time. Okay.
Same here.
Cool.
Yeah, same here.
Okay. So since it's their first time mentoring, so mentoring in general, whether it's for Practicum or for just a course, is fairly the same. Apart from the Practicum, it's shorter, and you're usually going to be more hands-on. But the things you'll be helping with are going to be similar, except that it's in a team environment, and you're kind of helping the flow of what they're working on, each week, as opposed to if you're mentoring, say, an advanced course or intro course, you're just helping students learn a particular topic like each week, like HTML, JavaScript, or React, or something else. Okay. But mentoring is fun. You get to learn a lot from other people and from yourself. Get to give back. It's a win-win for everybody. I guess we could wait maybe another minute or two till the people come in. So since it's probably the first time for most, I kind of assumed that we would have maybe more questions than usual. So I gave ourselves a little more time till 6:45. Then the students will come in, and I pretty much give the same spiel again, but just to students. So I have a presentation here. I'll post it if you want to have a copy of it for yourself. Put it in the chat. Let's see. So 6:45. Yes. So we'll have, so far we have four groups plus the Ruby Rails group, which we always kind of consider separate since we have so few mentors and students for that. But we have a total of 5 groups. But so there's usually always stragglers at the very end of an advanced course. So we can't really know an exact total until like kind of right before Practicum starts. Practicum officially starts next Monday, but we like to have all the students kind of submitted their final projects and so forth, ahead of time, but we won't know exactly for at least, closer to the beginning of Practicum. So Mary Alice set up the 4 channels plus the Dragonfish, I believe, right? Yeah, I believe so. I'm just looking right now. Yeah, so Dragonfish Practicum and DD Practicum team 1 through 4. So depending on if we have more students submit their final projects, we may have one more. So 5 teams plus the Ruby Rails group. Okay. So we usually have about 2 mentors per group. Since we may not have 5 teams plus Ruby Rails, we probably have 3 mentors per group. We may even have more mentors than we need. So we'll decide, if we have some extra mentors we don't necessarily need, because we probably wouldn't need more than 3 per group. We'll make that determination, by early next week. Mary Alice comes back on Monday. She kind of makes the final decisions and all that stuff. But we'll figure out if any more students have submitted their final projects and want to be in Practicum in the next couple of days. So normally we try to have at least an even number of students for the front end for React and the back end, Node Express. It depends again on a lot of factors, but I think we're kind of a little more heavy on the Node side, I think, if Mary has told me. But again, we'll figure it out at the very end or beginning of next week. But normally like to keep like 2 and 2 at least, or 3 and 3. Most of the time we're more React heavy, we'll have maybe like 3 or 4 React students and like 2 Node students, but it just really depends. So when we have mentors for each group, we like to kind of have mentors that either focus on the front end or back end. So if we have one mentor that's more familiar with the front end with React, then we'll try to have a second mentor that's more familiar with the back end with Node Express. Okay. And as far as the structure, the groups will meet at least once a week as a team, and then depending on their group, they'll have like individual smaller meetings. So they'll meet maybe just with the front end team once a week, or the back end team once a week, in addition to their team meeting. Those meetings you don't have to go to. It'll all be dependent on what the schedule works, and if they feel they want the mentor there. Sometimes they like to be just meet by themselves. So a lot of times I've noticed in previous practicums where most of the conversations happen in little group Slack groups that's separate from the Slack channel. So you'll say, wow, you may think, wow, it's pretty quiet in this channel, but they're all talking individually in their own, DM groups. So you won't see sometimes most of the messages, which is a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. It kind of sometimes makes it a little harder for you to get a gauge on where the students are at if you don't see the conversations and you only interact with them during the regular team meetings or if they have a question. But that's just kind of how it works most of the times. So don't get like alarmed if during the weeks of when practicum starts, there isn't much conversations going. There probably are, individual direct conversations, at least with the front and back end team, that's not in the channels. That's all. Let's see. So that's kind of like the structure. So again, you'll meet at least once a week. Depending on the schedule, sometimes you can meet twice, only if some students have schedules that don't mix with other students. So maybe you'll have one meeting during the week and maybe one on the weekend, just to make sure that everybody has met at least once. It really depends on the group. So it's kind of dependent on their schedule, your schedule, and how much frequency they feel they need. You'll kind of feel it out in the first couple of weeks. And if you feel they need more time, or they need more kind of one-on-one time or more group time, you can schedule accordingly and add more meetings if you need to. The students, they'll vary between people who are full-time students and taking these classes and maybe something else, and they're just constantly just learning. You have students that have full-time jobs and just do this at nighttime or the weekends or anything in between. So I've had students that are just, that's all they do is learn through the classes here and maybe other places, or again, they're full-time students, full-time parents, et cetera, all variations. Oops. So it's basically the main goal of Practicum, even though all the students feel it's to build a really cool app and make it look really nice, it's just to learn. A lot of times students learn through the advanced courses, but they don't really learn as much as they feel they need to learn or as much as they think they know. So this really kind of helps them solidify a lot of those skills where they may know it a little bit, but not as much as they think they do. And that's the kind of whole point. Now, most students are focused on building something cool, making it look nice, all those cool things, but it's important to stress to students, it's just learning. It's just another way of learning, and not to be really focused on the finished product, but be more focused on, how you grow individually, each week, and how you build your skills just from the tech, point of view, and also just your skills working in a team, communication. A lot of students, English is not their first language, so either they're open to get better at English, or they're the total opposite, where they'll just be quiet, like they just won't say just the bare minimum. It's up to you to decide how much you want to push for them to kind of communicate more, and their comfort level. I would side on kind of pushing a little bit to say, hey, it's okay to communicate even if you don't feel comfortable, talking in your non-native language, because at the end of the day, you'll have to, when you try to get a job, that English is the language everybody's gonna be speaking. I know I've had teams in the past where when they communicate in their own groups, they just talk in their native language, which that's fine, but they're really doing themselves a disservice because they're not pushing themselves to do things they're not comfortable with. So it's also about doing things you're not comfortable with. Is how you get better at it. You're never going to be better at something and be better at speaking your non-native language unless you do it all the time. And then do it where you don't feel comfortable, do it and you don't sound perfectly as good as you want to, but just get better at it. So get a feel for how comfortable they are in anything, and then try to, if you can, a little bit like push them to do things that they're not comfortable with. But it's always that balance where you don't want to push too hard. Any questions so far? No questions, Marna? You have a question, don't you? No? Okay. Hussein, any questions so far?
No.
No?
Yeah.
Okay. So as far as the workflow, try to like push, some sort of hybrid agile. It doesn't have to be like real strict at all. Like with sprints, it's up to them if they want to get more involved with sprints. I've had a full gambit of like fairly strict, or just giving them working on different tickets until they finish their work on the next ticket. It's not like, oh, new sprint coming. A lot of times it doesn't work that way. It's just like what things have to get done and who's going to work on it, and what are you working on now, what are you going to work on afterwards. So the main thing is kind of getting one of the most important things I feel is just getting them to decide on MVP functionality as early as possible. Usually that's going to change depending on how quickly the students have thought about it before Practicum officially starts. There's going to be some teams that have already met already and they already have ideas. There's also going to be teams that have just been joined at the last minute and have no idea what they want to do. But the most important thing is getting to that MVP where, okay, we want to build this and these are things we want it to do. And then you'll decide, okay, well, does that seem like a cool idea? Most of the times they're really cool. But the thing that, usually it's up to the mentors to say, okay, that's a cool idea, but maybe you're expecting too much. Usually they overestimate what they can do versus underestimate. But if they underestimate, it's kind of cool. But usually they'll say, oh, I want an app that does all these things. And you're like, okay, do you really think you can get all that done? So it's probably more of a mentor's job to say, pulling in the reins as far as like, okay, great idea. I love it. The MVP probably is a bit too much for 8 weeks. So normally I would say whatever the MVP is, most of the time you'll have to take away at least 20% of what they want to do. Again, it depends on a lot of factors, but usually that's been the case. But you can also say, okay, well, here's the things that you want the app to do, and maybe take 20% and say, okay, let's make these stretch goals. Where if we get through that, we could work on that. If not, you can work on those things after Practicum. You can also stress that Practicum isn't the 8 weeks isn't really the end. They can always work on it afterwards, especially if they don't have a plan after Practicum. Some students want to apply for apprenticeship. That may or may not happen depending on availability and if they're accepted. So there's going to be something that they want to work on after Practicum. That could be stretch goals. We could work on you can work on this now, and after 8 weeks work on all these things. And then through that process of them working on the MVP during those 8 weeks, there's bound to be a million other ideas that'll pop up. That, oh wow, we could add this. Oh, we could add this. Or oof, this is going to be too hard. We can't do this. It's going to happen, and it's really good that they've figured out on their own, as well. But kind of like tapering down some of their expectations of what they think what they can do, but then also them realizing by week 6, there's no way we can get all this done. So we're going to need, we have to cut off, some of those features, but try to get a feel for what you think they can do. Again, you're not going to know exactly. You're going to make guesses, like everybody else. But stress like, hey, it's not about all the cool features it does. It's about just learning and figuring things out, and learning from each other, and not only getting better in their tech skills, but also getting better at their like soft skills, like communication, teamwork, agile, GitHub, and things like that.
So from
nice.
Putting my project manager hat on here, like when communicating with students, I mean, obviously life happens, different people are gonna go above or below that, but like when you communicate with students, what is the expected number of hours that they will be like contributing to this project each week?
Yeah, normally Mary Alice says the same number of hours per week as like the advanced courses, whatever hours they put in. So 10 hours, 10 to 15, I would say. But again, it really depends on the student's availability, if they're full-time students, if they're just doing it on the side. But I would say start at 10 hours.
And it's 10 hours of junior dev productivity.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say 10 hours is a good starting point. And then you can say, oh, you can put a little more, put a little less, depending,
Yeah, and I mean, I know, I just want to know ballpark, like what we ask them to do, because that influences how much you can scope for a week.
Yeah, I would say roughly the same hours as the advanced courses. Yeah. So if you have a mentor in advanced course, you're like, what does that mean, Frank? Pretty much when they go through the advanced courses, it's definitely going to be, they have to put more time in than the intro course. But usually we say at the beginning of the advanced courses, assume, I think it's 10 to 15 hours a week for getting through each week's topic, whether they took the React course or the Node Express course. Again, each person is going to be varying. Some are spending like 25 hours, some are spending 10, and they get the same stuff, the same amount done, or they just have more time. But I would say assume 10 to 15 hours, but there's going to be students who are putting like 40 in, like really legitimately, they're going to put 40 hours in. I've seen it because that's all they have work going, they have to do. But yeah. As far as project management tools, whatever you're comfortable with or what they want to use. So GitHub projects they could use, Trello, Jira, whatever you're comfortable with, whether they want to learn it, or simple old basic, spreadsheet, but try to use an actual management tool like a Trello projects or Jira. Okay. So another big thing that's going to happen is they're going to have merge conflicts. They may or may not have dealt with that already. They probably haven't. So I would say that's probably one of the first things that you want to talk about, in the initial first week or two of just handling merge conflicts. If you can create like a little demo of a merge conflict to show them, and maybe not the first meeting, maybe the second meeting, the first meeting or two is probably all about the project, the MVP, and so forth. But if maybe during week 2, you could say, hey, let's do a little demo of how you would handle merge conflict, just create a little repo and, create a little conflict if you can. If not, then they'll eventually get to a merge conflict and then you just work with them. But merge conflicts, I think, are one of the big things that most students have trouble, and everybody does, but since they probably never had merge conflicts already with the advanced courses or something, on their own, that's probably going to be the first thing that they're going to have problems with, and things will get messed up. It just happens, and just making sure they don't stress out about it too much.
Is there anything in our curriculum about like leveraging feature branches or things, or is that also something we should go through with them?
Yeah, I was just going to get to that. Yeah, so I don't think there's nothing we have in the website, which I think, did Mary Alice post already? Yeah.
The curriculum?
Yeah, for the practicum.
Yeah,
see
I can
the
throw it in the
website
Zoom chat. I actually have it open.
Okay. Um, and okay, yeah, she did that already. Cool. So this is what, is like a basic guide of what we would like them to be working on, or at what place in, um, their development those should be at. Again, this will change a lot. But we have them at the beginning, kind of setting up, well, the repo is already set up, but working on their MVP, project management at the beginning, and then working on like the initial boilerplate for their front end and so forth. So you could probably have in this first 2 weeks, as we have sprints, but first 2 weeks, talk about Git and GitHub flow, merge conflicts, PRs, which they do PRs in the advanced course. Yeah, so the PRs I know about, but branches. Well, in the React course they don't do branching, but in the Node Express they do branching, I believe.
No, they do branching
They
in the
do?
React course. Yeah, well,
Okay, all right, cool.
Varying levels of success, but yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So they know about branching, but yeah, definitely I would do it just to run through maybe a little demo of just,
And they don't do dev branching, right? So like they don't have a dev
okay.
branch that they're merging into
Right.
that they then merge into their deployed version of main. They just
Right.
open a branch off main, merge into main.
Right. Yeah. So definitely I would say in maybe that second week of the first 2 weeks, go through a little demo of like GitHub workflow, merge conflicts, feature branches, and things like that. Again, you have to kind of review it again with them or help them, but at least give them a little more information about it, so everybody's relatively at the same place, starting out. Okay, that was a good point too. Let's see. So you can do like deployment earlier rather than later. A lot of times students don't even worry about deployment until at the very end. If you want, you can do deployment maybe, let's see, by in this time frame here, like once they have something on the front end and something on the back end, you can say, hey, let's work with deploying both and then making sure it works, okay, as opposed to, waiting towards the very end, then do deployment, which of course we all know when you deploy something, it works great locally, and then, oh, whoa, what happened? It doesn't work when it's deployed. Well, it's good. Still going to localhost. I'm referencing things, absolutely instead of relative. Like the server isn't using the same environment that I think it is. It's a wrong node version. Yada 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 yada. So if you can, once they get like something, on the front end and the back end, like just a basic API with just some data getting sent back and some sort of front end, say, hey, let's focus, for this, meeting, or at some point getting it deployed and making it work. So you're not kind of like, they're not like doing crazy stuff at the very end to do it. Now, deployment isn't a requirement for Practicum, so it's not like they have to. Most students like to have it deployed just to kind of see, hey, everybody can see it. But it's not a requirement. So also stressing, hey, again, it's all about learning. It's not about like a finished, deployed application. But it's also cool if they can, learn about that process too. So maybe by the third week, maybe between third and fourth week, try to do a deployment and go through any bugs and stuff that probably will happen as well, which is kind of cool, a cool idea. Yeah, I think that was most for that slide. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question about the code review bullet there. Is that usually just the mentors reviewing their stuff, or do they also do like peer reviewing or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say it'd be a combination. So you could have you could say, okay, well, one mentor and one other student has to do a code review, depending on if there's enough students on the front and back end to do it. And sometimes, there isn't, there's two. But I would say have it where one mentor and one student has to do a review before it gets merged? Yeah. That's good question. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, not too bad on time. So we have here for the got that link already, which was up here. Resources, GitHub, we have all it set up already. Everybody's in the Slack already. There is a Google, everybody uses the same Zoom link. So there's a Zoom schedule where they can pretty much put their regular weekly meetings if they want to use Zoom. Now, they don't have to use Zoom. They could just use like, Slack huddles. So you don't have to use Zoom. But if they want to, for your weekly team meetings, you can put that schedule up on there just so, it's not overlapping with other teams, even though, it's 5 teams, but spread out over a week, usually there isn't too much overlap. Expectations. So communicate regularly. So you have your weekly team meetings. As I said before, usually sometimes it can be quiet in the channel. So you just, check in the channel. Hey, is everybody doing okay? Any blockers? Anybody wants to go through anything, in between meetings? You can mention that. So it's, a dress rehearsal for either trying to be an apprentice to Code a Dream or for their, when they start applying for jobs. Here was at 10 to 20 hours. So again, most students won't be apprentices because of various reasons. So really this is like the best way that they'll get, working in the team type of experience. If they've been through a boot camp, they'll get some, but most haven't. So this is a great way to get, more experience working in a team environment, which definitely is different than working just on their own. Let's see. So each mentor should attend each meeting. Said that. Said that. So I said all this stuff already. So again, we'll probably have at least 2 to 3 mentors per group. So, if you all can't make the same meeting, like, then, or if the schedule doesn't work for you, you could just be a mentor that just, does PR reviews or answers questions, in Slack. So if the schedule doesn't work for you for meeting, with the group, you could do other things, it's all good. As long as you're, there to support the students, that's all that matters.
So are we basically like whatever group of us is assigned together, like as a group of mentors, can we just kind of decide like who's doing what as a group and what works best for our small group of mentors?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. There are going to be some that haven't mentored and are kind of apprentices. So those, I would say, Marina, Hussein, KJ, were kind of are just apprentices now that haven't like mentored before and also are kind of getting their first, foot in the door as part of development. I would say, they would be more of just kind of like more of the backup. The ones that are already developers who have, more experience, they will be more of the lead mentors in kind of leading the team, checking in, making sure with the team, everything's doing okay and they're on the right path. So the ones that kind of have the least experience, they're just apprentices now. They'd be more just kind of supporting, the main lead mentors, and or maybe helping with PR reviews. And also, since there's 3 mentors, the amount of time that you'll be needed to, do every week will be a lot less. So I would say, 5 hours a week, should be good. For the ones that are kind of like backup mentors, maybe even less than that. Outside the, team meetings, you have team meetings, which maybe just once a week, maybe twice. Other than that, it's just, PR reviews, so, I don't want any mentor spending, more than 5-6 hours a week, unless just some sort of issue or problem. I want to kind of alleviate the amount of time all the mentors, spend. That's why we try to get a couple mentors per group. So, it's not put, the pressure on one mentor.
So how much for like ticket creation, scoping, stuff like that, how much of that are we as mentors doing versus like, I mean, obviously like the students have not done that in a class before, so I would not expect them
Yeah.
to just be able to do that. How much are we like more of doing that for them versus like coming alongside them and teaching them how to do that?
I would say for ticket creation, I would say you would start with doing that, mainly, with the mentor. It's like, okay, like based upon the functionality of, what the MVP is going to have, these are some initial tickets that, we need to do, especially at the very beginning, with initially like, boilerplating the front end, the back end, initial functionality. I would say, lead mentors should kind of set up those initial tickets. And then as they get more comfortable, then they can start doing some on their own. Or
Okay.
you can kind of factor in which students are going to be more comfortable doing it. After a couple weeks, you
Right.
kind of get a feel for that.
Yeah. So students
far as,
create
like,
requirements. So students like
Yes.
they get to so students create requirements, mentors prune requirements because they're going to be overachievers in that, or
Right.
maybe more of organize the backlog, right? Or prioritize the requirements that are created. Mentors create tickets, and then as we continue on, students can start creating their own tickets from there.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Some teams like literally run themselves. Other teams need a lot more support. It's, I definitely feel thing for that first week or two. Just as past practicum that just finished, there's one team that the entire team did the entire backlog themselves. They didn't, the mentors were just there to kind of answer technical questions, to give them advice, but they did everything. Other teams, the ones I was on, I basically said, okay, well, what are we doing this week? How about these ideas? Like the kind of MVP kind of was organically grown week by week. They really didn't, they had some ideas like, what about this? What about that? Oh, it's a good idea. Like, so they had a couple initial features and that's all they had. And then they were done after 2-3 weeks. Then I and the mentor came in like myself and said, what about this? What about that? And kind of like that grown week by week. So, it's not like a hard and fast, like this is going to happen. It's depending on, the students' confidence level, the students, technical level, and whether, some students are going to be more active and or passive. If you have a group, I don't know how Mary Alice create the teams apart from just front end, back end. But if you don't have any students that are really active and they're more on the quiet, passive side, you'll have to lead more. If you have students that they're all pretty active and they're kind of leaders, you can just step back and like, do your thing. It really, and that's one of in a way the cool things of doing practicum is like it's always going to be different. The end result's kind of the same, but how you get there is going to be different depending on what team you're on. It really is. It's pretty fascinating actually too. Yeah, I definitely would really kind of do some hand holding a lot at the very beginning, and then kind of slowly let go and see what happens. But again, it's also dependent on if the team's kind of formed early enough and they're already talking and they're already going on an idea and stuff. You'll figure that out within that first meeting or two. Okay. We're still good on time. Let's see what else we got. Oops. Yeah, so kind of how I said, you'll have a daily scrum, but you'll have like a weekly scrum, and they could have their own internal front end, back end, maybe not about daily, but twice a week, maybe meetings, so when you actually do meet, once a week as a team, twice a week as a team, you'll do like a regular, type of scrum meeting where each person says, hey, this is what I'm working on. This is what I'm finished. These are some problems that I'm trying to figure out. You can help them right during the meeting, help them one-on-one, or they'll have other people on their team help them. And they'll say, hey, this is what I'm going to work on, next week or this coming week. Or they'll say, hey, you finished that, it's great. How about work on this ticket? Or what do you want to work on next? So again, you get a feel on how comfortable they are choosing what they want to work on each week, or if they want to be like, oh, well, you tell me what I should do. You get a feel for that. So again, based upon the schedule, for them and for yourself. If you want to meet on a weekend, you'll see what availability they have. Let's see, class flow. Yeah, so the repos are already created for 4 teams and the Ruby Rails. They should be cloning. They're not going to be forking. So make sure they understand the differences. So this you may want to have them do for the first meeting. Okay, just making sure. So I kind of set up a really basic front end, back end repo. Just so one thing about that is the front end team, the React people, they may or may not know anything about the back end, and or vice versa. But especially for the front end team, they may or may not understand, like, oh, I have to have 2 repos. I have to have both of them running in order for the front end to connect to the back end. So that's probably one thing that you may want to mention either in the first meeting or the second meeting, just having them, know that they have to clone both the front end and the back end repo in order for like them to talk to each other. The back end team doesn't matter, they're just building the API, but obviously in the front end, it does matter. So that's something you definitely want to talk about early, and making sure they're all feel comfortable doing that. And then at some point, when you focus on deployment, if you focus on that earlier, you can have the backend team just deploy, and then the front end team doesn't really have to have the backend repo up to date. They just are hitting, the deployed API. So that's kind of if you want to do that setup. Any questions on that part?
Should we already have invites to both of those?
GitHubs?
Yeah.
That's a good question too.
'Cause I only got an invite to one.
I got the
Okay.
front end and back end one.
Oh, you did?
My-
I think
Okay.
I also got both.
Oh wait,
Same here.
I apparently got both and just didn't realize it.
Rebecca, oh my
I know.
God.
I know.
I have
Wow.
a question.
Yes.
About, I know that it said optional, but do we make a Trello, or would they make a Trello and then invite us into it if they make one?
Yeah. I would say yeah. I would say the mentor should make the final decision on the tool and then starting it and inviting. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
So
okay.
if you
So
all
it'll be
decide
on the
Trello, then
mentors.
yes. Unless
Okay.
occasionally some students already do it already, but if they haven't, I would say, okay, and you want to use Trello, Trello, create an account, invite them. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So that'll be probably decided in that first or second meeting as well. So, all the GitHub stuff initially, talking about the MVP if they haven't talked about it yet, and then deciding on the management tool and then setting it up and inviting them. Yes.
So I have a
Other
question
question?
about merging branches. So
Yes.
who is supposed to merge the branch, and it should be approved before merging by all the students or all the members?
Yeah, so you could decide, if it's front end or back end, you could say, okay, well, a rule would be 1 mentor and 1 student. And then once it's approved, then one of the mentors can merge. And a student can merge too, but you could say that a mentor, should merge. Yeah, you can decide that rule. Any other questions on that? Okay. I think we're almost done, are we? Let's see. Yeah, that was it. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I have another practicum. So after practicum, there's gonna be an evaluation for students and mentors. So all the students have to submit an evaluation on themselves and also all their peers, and then the mentors have to fill out evaluations for all their mentees, all their students. And I'll send that out, at some point, towards the end of the 8 weeks. Takeaways. So you can also have office hours too. So, or just have one-on-ones. So if a student is having some problem, whether from a technical point of view or working with a particular, teammate point of view, they can reach out to you and you can schedule a one-on-one, or just for a general office hour, say, hey, we're meeting once a week for our team, and you can have your individual front and back end, but maybe, this time every week I'm available just if you want to just, check into, Slack or Zoom and ask me anything. You could do that too if you want. So depending on how you feel the team is working, their technical ability, you could have also an office hours as well. I'm not saying every mentor has to have an office hour, but you have like a general mentor office hour at a certain time that's separate from a team meeting, and then one or two mentors can be available at that time each week. Not everybody, unless you want to. Usually most students, are usually want to just figure things out on their own. But like I said, I don't want mentors spending more than 5 hours, and I don't want the kind of the backup mentors, that are going to be the apprentices spending more than 3 or 4 hours. But with 3 mentors per team, there should be more than enough, availability with mentors and students. But again, I want to keep the time you spend to a minimum, because it's your time and you're volunteering. Okay, I think, yep, that's it. Cool, we made it in time. 6:44. Sweet. Any other questions?
Just when you get a chance, I don't think I didn't try it again, but I think the permissions on the slides are private. Like I'm not able to
you
access
can't.
it.
Oh, you can't? Oh. Maybe. Oh, okay. Oh, good. Students set up. So, anyone with the link? Okay, we'll try it now. I think it's the same link. If it's not, I'll put it out. Is it good? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Damn that Mary Alice! Can't believe her. Unbelievable. She only has 85,000 things to do. I'm like, she can't do that. Come on. Awesome. Any other questions? Of course, she's going to hear that when she sees the recording, but she I love it. She I love her. I love her. Anything else? Any questions, Hussein? Come on. Give me a question, Hussein. Come on. Any question?
Any question? Okay.
Any question? Anything at all? Ask me something.
So, how are we gonna communicate? Like, if we're gonna meet during the weekend, like let's say if we're traveling or if we're not, available.
On the weekend, you said?
Yeah, weekend.
Well, if you're available, which you'll determine if you are or not. Just through if someone posts a question, say hey, or you could say at the very beginning, my availability is this. If you're not available weekends, just say I'm not available weekends. Say if you have questions to ask that you want to directly message me. Try to push if they have questions to post it in Slack so other people can see the question answered too. But if you say, hey, I'm available only on these particular hours or these particular days, that's it. And then since there's probably going to be 3 mentors per group, other mentors will cover the other times if there questions come up. Usually the questions won't come up till I would say week 3, 4, and beyond. The first couple of weeks we're just figuring things out. But just state your availability to the other mentors. Hey, I'm available in the evenings on these 2 days, but weekends I'm not, or vice versa. Or say, hey, I'm cool covering these 2 days. You can cover these. And if any questions come up, you can help. But a lot of times they figure things out a lot on their own or within their group. And occasionally they'll post things, in Slack or direct message you.
Thank you.
Cool.
I had one quick question if we still have time.
Yeah.
For deploying it, if we do deploy it, like does it matter what what's it called, platform we use? I know I think for the Node course they used Render.
Yeah, so I think as far as free ones left, I think Render is probably one of the few ones that are left. I think Railway is going away from that, or some sort of like $5 a month with a $5 credit thing or something. But I think Render is the only really truly free one left, which they have already in the Node Express course. With their front end, you know, Vercel, Netlify, like whatever, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. Yep.
Frank, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, so I actually didn't receive the invite for the repositories that Mary created.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just send me a direct message just to remind
Yeah.
me, and I'll get that set up for it. Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know
Yeah.
exactly before she left on vacation yesterday if she did all of them or partial. I think she was kind of just partial there. So yeah, just if you didn't get access to the 2 repos, just send me a message and I'll set up for you.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Cool. Everybody else okay? It's going to be super exciting. Super exciting. It's going to be action packed. So the practicum officially starts on Monday. If you want to start a meeting over the weekend, if students are in there already, you can, but it definitely doesn't start until Monday. So just post something in the channel at some point this week or by weekend saying, hey, you know, welcome to Practicum, I'm your mentor, yada, yada, yada. You know, the hardest thing is getting the availability for everybody. That's probably the hardest thing. You could do like any, I know there's like, I always forget, I'll find a couple little schedule apps where people can use to put their schedule down. I always forget off the top of my head what they are, but I know there's a bunch out there. Or you just do like a little survey or a spreadsheet or whatever. But the initial hardest things is just getting everybody's schedule and figure out when you can meet, you know? So that's probably the first thing you want to kind of figure out, maybe before week 1 officially starts. If people are all in the Slack channel already, it's just getting everybody's schedule down as far as when you can schedule a meeting, you know? So that could be like your first task is getting everybody's schedule out and figuring out when you can meet. And again, any questions, you know, just reach out to me. Or Rebecca, either or, me or Rebecca, whichever you want. She knows more than me anyway, so reach out to her maybe.
Please don't.
Oh,
I have no idea what I'm doing.
Come on. Cool. So I think we have a few students here, but you don't have to stay for the same spiel I'm going to give again to the students. If you want to, you can, but definitely don't have to. But thanks again for volunteering. I'll touch base with everybody end of the week, and especially early next week to see if we have to add another group. But I'll make sure I communicate with everybody to make sure everybody's settled and they know what they're doing.